after he stabbed my heart, I went right back to sleep. I went right back to comfort zones. I went right back to my garments are back on.
Interesting.
The sleepy sheepy of the LDS. Love your neighbor as yourself. No pedestals, no pits. We're all in need of the same salvation. The man that translated that and brought this to my life wasn't a prophet who also was a predator. Isaiah is so much easier to understand when you believe the church is apostate.
Right.
Like when the church is not apostate, like Isaiah does not make sense. If you're baptized into the true church, you're saved. It has nothing to do with your relationship with Christ, and that is robbing people of their salvation.
Everyone has a journey they're walking. And along that road, we are met with potholes, road bumps, rain, storms, and sometimes just fog. But through it all, we're really just looking for one thing: clarity. Clarity so we can walk with confidence in that next step. There's one source I run to for that clarity. In the darkest of nights, Jesus offers me light that shines through even the thickest storms. Welcome to the Clarity Podcast, where we find clarity through the one who saves us all.
I was envisioning all these things, and I could see the thing that was attacking me, and Brigham Young was there, and then he stabbed it, and it was on me, and I have a picture of it, and I was looking back at that a couple years ago when I was waking up, and it was just this drawing of Brigham Young stabbing me in the heart. I mean, yeah, there's this like black goo stuff that I was dealing with or that was attacking me as well. It was just 2 attacks, honestly. But it's significant because I'd been going to God. I'd been like, nourish me, like, and taking off my garments, learning to say no to things, so it could matter. And after he stabbed my heart, I went right back to sleep. I went right back to comfort zones. I went right back to my garments are back on.
Interesting.
The sleepy sheepy of the LDS. I went right back to it. Actually waking up, the events that led to that happened 3 to 5 years after all of that. Well, anyway, it was just that preceded it.
Okay, let's transition into COVID.
Okay. So 2020, we put an offer down on our house we moved into the day before the lockdown in March 2020. So we moved in April of that year when there was no church. There were like the Relief Society presidency and the bishopric knew we moved in, and they did like social distanced doorstep introductions. I was still, April 2020, I hadn't woken up yet. Mm-hmm. And my last ward that I was moving from, I had some drama that happened where it was like, it was so bad that God had to cancel church and move me 45 minutes away so I could save face.
Wait, what happened?
I was on the activities committee, and just committees are a place where ideas go to die. Especially if they're mine.
Especially if they're mine.
And you're the weird Mormon, so.
We used to say when you're on a committee, you have to have one chair that remains empty, and it's for all of the egos in the room.
We need 5. And there were only 4 of us. They're just trying to plan this activity. It was the Relief Society dinner in March, and I just wanted it to be on the love God has for us. The guest speaker that I had a pretty good guest speaker that I thought would be great, but apparently it didn't fall within the bounds of the manual because she wasn't in our stake. And I was like, when has that been? Anyway, there was just so much drama. There was so much drama in how that played out. The summation of it, where I felt like God moved me out of that to help me save face was funnier than the actual scenario. but
Okay.
but just, I don't know. I couldn't do any of my inspired ideas. Like there was so much red tape you had to get through that no matter what I prayed about, it just got shut down. And I couldn't even bring my own ideas to the bishop to get approval with my own heart for it, you know?
Right.
And so, yeah, just drama. And then church was closed or canceled. So we didn't even ever have the activity. So, you know, and then I moved.
All that for nothing.
And at first I was kind of watching the, like April conference. I was watching to know what to do. Like what's going on in our world. I'm hearing things. I'm not really I don't watch the news. I don't like to be too dialed into anything, especially if it's the mainstream outlets. You know, I just don't feel like you're going to get the full picture and that it's a lot of fear mongering. And so I was kind of insulated against what was going on, other than I knew that everything was locked down. I didn't know if I was even going to be able to get a moving van or boxes or anything. But I remember April, I was really hoping for a significant conference, something that just gave direction, and it didn't come. And
Typical of conference, waiting
Right?
for an answer, and it's just fluff.
yeah. I always took the advice to heart that I think it might have even been Bednar that said it, whether a meeting's boring or not is up to you, and what you get out of it is up to you. Where there's just this, and for me, that was am I taking things to God? Am I prayerfully attending this meeting? Do I have things on my heart I could be prayerful over? And so I kind of take my, like what I get out of a meeting into my own hands. So no matter what's being said, I'm going to get something out of it because I'm just having a talk with God, you know?
Yeah.
But also through an LDS lens. So so I remember getting something from that conference, but I was in some fear. I had my kids in a private school. My best friend was a founder of it. Okay, that year came to an end pretty quickly. And at that point, I was just dropping them off and picking them up. And I wasn't very involved at the school. I just had a resource it was 3 days a week for 4 hours each of the days. And it helped with the homeschooling. It was kind of a hybrid for homeschooling and private school, just some resources. School it's the lockdown. And then my friend who founded the school, I need a way to refer to this person without her name. We could call her Sharon.
Okay.
So eventually that is where it kind of goes. But she reached out to me to see if I wanted to do sunrise yoga on the temple grounds with just a group she was getting together. And I was like, okay, but who's going to lead it? And it's like, I was hoping you would. And I'm like, that's a weird way to ask me to you got me to commit to it. and then like, surprise, you're in charge. And it's a lot to lead a class and prepare everything. But I didn't necessarily want to do anyone else's yoga. I'm kind of picky. And so I was like, that works for me. And so we started doing, so because I was praying, like for conference, I was really trying to get out of fear. I was really not wanting to be like huddled in my house, afraid of things and wanting God to verify and confirm to me that like, my desires were good and I was safe and, it was safe to be in society and it was, like all these things. And so this phone call of like, let's leave the house together and meet and do this thing, was a confirmation to me to step out of that fear. And then nothing bad happened from it.
Yeah.
No one died. And at least not yet, but
What? All right, I'm assuming we'll get to that.
We'll get to that.
All right.
But it hasn't. But as far as leaving my house in 2020, it was all good. And that kind of brings in the school piece, but I'll kind of keep talking on the church piece for 2020. Once church resumed, which happened later in that, like a couple months later, right? I can't remember exactly, but it was still 2020 when things opened back up. My ward was requiring masks and you couldn't sing the hymns. I Was Awake happened November, December of 2020. So we're in like fall-ish, end of summer, fall-ish. But I felt like because I didn't put a face covering on the entire time. I went grocery shopping. I'd have them with me and be determined to be led by the Spirit. Like, God, if you want me to put this on, tell me, it's with me, but otherwise I'm not wearing it, you know? So when I went to church, I didn't have one, and my whole family went with me, and it was a sea of eyes, and we were the only ones with our faces uncovered when I showed up, and we were not supposed to sing, and my family sang. Yeah. And there was only one verse that was played per hymn, but we sang that verse. And then the next week we showed back up because I just remember feeling like I was supposed to go for a reason. Like I was supposed to go. And so I was going. I loved home church. I didn't really want to go. I didn't know any of these people. That's the other thing. No one knew us. We moved in April and there was a lockdown. So here is like, who are these people like showing up like with all their germs hanging out on their face and like singing? Who are they? You know? And so the next week we showed back up and they cut the songs down to just the intro, outro, and they didn't even do a full verse. And I was like, are you seriously like that? I mean, I could be wrong that wasn't a direct response to us singing, but I don't think I'm wrong.
Yeah, you're probably right.
But then the other thing that had happened is that my two oldest daughters were trying to make friends and go to the young women's activities. And I kept on checking beforehand. They're not going to put on a face covering. Are they still welcome to go? Is everyone comfortable with that? Should I keep them home instead? Like tending to everybody's feeling, like, is everyone else comfortable? And going through the work of making sure they'd be okay. And then they'd come home and be like, they made us wear one. And it'd be activities like they're 15, 16, you know, and maybe just a little bit younger at this point, where they go to Young Women's to make Play-Doh.
What? Were they doing anything productive?
No.
They never do, I swear.
And so I was like, well, maybe we can find friends in other ways, you know, and like there is no pressure from me for you to go to any of these things you don't want to go to. And then the leaders would try to like circumvent me to go straight to my daughters to get them to go to activities. And one of the things was this camp out. One of the members in our ward has a cabin in Strawberry. So, like we're just doing this overnight and it'll be super awesome. And it was just called the youth. They changed all the verbiage from young women's and young men's to youth activities. Like it doesn't distinguish between young women's, young men's. It's just like the youth activities. So in talking to them about my youth, my two girls for their youth activities, it was always just youth activities. So then when they're like, hey, come to this youth camp out, I didn't feel good about it. And I kept on asking questions and I wasn't getting any replies. And I was like, well, can I go? And it was like, well, we're not letting if we let one parent go, then they're all going to want to go. And there's just not enough room for.
They were telling no to parents going on the camp out.
I think I'm probably the only one who asked, honestly.
Wrong.
Yeah.
That is so wrong. I'm sorry.
And
no.
So, yeah. And so I'm like, I'm not feeling good about it. I understand the space thing. And like, I understand you say, you know, like you say yes to, I understand your reasonings, like, but that just means that we're not going to participate. Mm-hmm. And so after it was over, that's when it goes, suddenly they're not so close-lipped about it. It was a co-ed camp out.
What? Who was planning this camp out and keeping it a secret?
I don't know. I remember like on like our ward Facebook thing, like no one knew me. They like the youth leaders knew my daughters, but then they're like, they posted about the camp out and I was like, hang on, this was co-ed? Like everyone was okay with this? And my comment got deleted. And so I don't know, but the other thing that happened with the youth was that there was a swimming thing activity, and it was actually on our street because we lived like 10 minutes from our church. So something that was in our neighborhood was awesome because that never happened, and it was swimming. So I'm like, if you want to go, you can go. And they asked if they could walk home instead of me. Like, can we go ourselves and come home and just have that autonomy of like, you generally have to drive them everywhere. And they were excited about just having that autonomy. I'm like, yeah, sure. Like walk home. Text me before you, just let me know, keep me posted when you're on your way. So the activity was supposed to end around 6. And at 7, Jenna, my second oldest, calls me, and she's like, "They won't let us walk home. I've been trying to say you're okay with it, but like we've been here for an hour trying to convince them to let us go home." And I'm like, "Okay, hand the leader your phone. I'll talk to her." And so they're like, "We just don't feel comfortable with it." I'm like, "We live on the same street." It's like, yeah, but they're under ours. Like they're our responsibility. I am like, I release you from all responsibility over the activity is over. They are now under my care again. Like you are absolved of anything that can go wrong between that house and my house, like let them walk home. And then, I think it clicked in the lady's head that we were actually the project family. And so then she started like backpedaling of just like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't want to offend," and all these things. And it's like, yeah, okay, but you've got this calling, but I'm their mother. Mm-hmm. They can walk home. And so she hands the phone back to my daughters, and I'm still on speakerphone. Like I'm not on the call's still on, it's still live. And I hear her say, "I just don't feel good about you listening to your mother."
What in the world?
And
what?
So
I don't feel good about you listening to your mother.
And I was like, there are so many other ways you could have approached that. And she's like, "It's just so dark out." It wasn't dark at 6 when they were supposed to be able to walk home.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so they just had the phone on the whole time, just talking to me on their 5-minute walk, got home safely. She kind of creeped behind them in her car, like.
That is so
Anyway,
bizarre.
So I call that the low-key kidnapping event of 2020. Is if I sent my children to a friend's house and their friend's parent didn't allow my children to leave and come home, like when they were supposed to come home because they didn't feel good about them listening to me, they'd never go back to that friend's house. Like
So why is it okay that happens in the church? Like, because it's a church. That's the reason.
Yeah.
What?
It's in the handbook. They're in charge. They're supposed to drive everyone home. I'm like, that. It's not from the church building.
Is that
it's
seriously in the handbook? For real?
Well, I know when I complained to my mom that she had all of their side of things, like things to, well, I can see it from this person. And I know with my dad doing a lot of scouting things, there's just a lot of preventing kids from, there's liability in letting children leave activities on their own. But that's from like the church house, maybe even like they're 10, like give them a ride home from that. But I don't know. Things fluctuate so much. I remember there were years I couldn't be in my leader's car to the years where you had to be in like they had to drive you home, and it just changes so much that it's like, just let them walk home. They're like,
or maybe let them listen to their parents.
Yeah.
What?
Or if there is a conflict, you don't like have to end. You don't get to have the final word of, "I don't feel good about you listening to your mom."
Yeah, that's really messed up.
So that was pretty much my experience in my ward before waking up. I do have a face covering story that covers that period too.
Okay. Yep. Tell it.
Because there was one time I did wear something because I was going on a flight. It was really hard to avoid. So I mentioned before that I trained in therapeutic guided imagery. And so I was very familiar with being in state, being in higher influenceable, like just where your critical mind filter is bypassed, and everything's just going straight into the subconscious, just deeply getting just all messaging's going in, and kind of get into the state with movies and stuff. And so it's good to be careful what you watch, but like, what are you consuming and like getting in there? But But what I noticed was after hours of breathing my own breath, I noticed I was in a hypnotic state. And I was like, oh, this is weird that I'm here. So I just like started praying about it. Like since I'm here, what can I learn? Okay, God, bringing you in on this experience. And so I just prayed for direction, and I learned so many fascinating things about like just paying attention to what was all the marketing, what was on the walls of the airport, what was like what was on the TVs, what was going into me without that critical mind filter, because I'd gotten myself into a hypnotic state just from just breathing my own air for that extended period of time. And I was like, people are walking around like this. Like everyone is walking around like this. And so I could see how all of the fear messages were getting deeper, a lot more deeper, a lot harder to fight, because there's no critical mind filter to process it through if you're in that state. And so I'm not, and again, this was what happened to me. So I'm not going to say that everyone is all the time in that state because of it, but it was an experience I was given, a lens to see it through.
It's really interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I find it very interesting. And so.
Well, and it's important to think about what kind of effects that has on us. Because if you don't stop and ask yourself those questions, how are you going to know? So,
right.
Yep. Okay. What was like your next it sounds like you are awakening in little steps without realizing it, like hindsight 2020, right?
Yes.
So what happened next?
So what really got me to my point of waking up, all these things of 2020 were kind of just they were just contemporaneously occurring with what actual events were waking me up. Like my best friend, turned out to be a narcissist, and she practiced witchcraft, and she was the founder of the school I had my children in.
Okay. How did you come to these conclusions? Because you don't just wake up one day and realize that.
Yeah, because she was my best friend, and I'd been like 5 years, and she encouraged like all these, like I thought that she pointed to Christ. Like it was her camouflage where she'd point to Christ. There were so many layers of her manipulation where it's like, well, don't trust me, take it to God. And then you trust her because you're like, oh, she doesn't even want me to like just trust her, so I can trust her. And then she would like, if it were me, and then tell you what to think, She would skirt around direct speech too. So if you wanted her thoughts on something, it would always end up back like circling around to, well, what do you think? And getting you to speak first. And then she would like,
it's like one of those people that makes your head just spin after talking to them.
Yes.
You're like, I don't even know what's what anymore.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I remember that specific maneuver she used. Anyone who's watched previous podcasts, Josh Choate, the school he was speaking about was this school. And he actually, I remember the day where he used that maneuver back at her, and it was like, oh, but we were still friends and I had no idea that anything was wrong. But he's like, well, what do you think? And then she's like she just, everyone felt just everyone, there was just like this pressure relief of like, yeah, like she does that to us, and she's getting to see what it feels like. And like everyone experienced that, but hadn't ever been able to really put words to it, or to that experience, because we just had her on a pedestal. Right. The love bombing that happens in the beginning where you feel so seen and understood, and she's the only person in the whole world who gets you the way that, like, I honestly, anyone who like gets me on a deep level, I don't think that, I think that's sketchy. Now I'm like, no,
trust nobody.
Trust no one. Yeah. She would talk so quietly. Like she had just this soft, really soft voice. So everyone had to lean in. And she always had people leaning in to hear her whenever she was speaking. she wouldn't text you. She wouldn't text or call you really, because in person, she just had so much influence, like her charisma and her influence. She could sway people with her presence. If you disagreed with her, you were under demonic possession. She didn't straight out say it like that. Because she's like, I don't think I'm talking to Julie right now. I don't think Julie would want me to give you, whoever I'm talking to, the information that you're asking for. So once Julie's back, I'd be willing to talk to Julie about this.
Whoa, that is manipulative. Okay, what would you say are like the signs? Because these people mix like normal communication with manipulation. Like there's some things I'm hearing that I'm like, okay, but this could be normal in a normal setting, right? But then there's other things I'm like, but this is what makes it messed up. So like, what would you say are the signs of witchcraft or cult leader? Maybe pinpoint some of that for our audience.
Okay. But it was setting themselves up as an authority. Without looking like they were. It has to do with like the trust me, but don't trust me. Like don't trust me, but kind of if you disagreed, you would get that, the creepy stuff, that the punishment that made you realign with her to make that stop. There's the triangulation. Everyone, like, she couldn't wait for me to meet so-and-so, and we're going to be such great friends if I can get past this annoying tendency they have. But it's just and so you should not trust this person like fully, because look at their judgment, skills or whatever. And I don't know, it was a weird scenario altogether, but it was always every person that I was told I'd be best friends with, there was always some
reason why you might not be that.
Yeah. And it makes me wonder. And at the time I never wondered what was being said about me that would make people maybe not want to fully connect with me. But I noticed that when we were all together, it felt like we were all like, yeah, we're friends, but we're all here to see this one person. Yeah, and so we're all just in competition for her attention.
Disconnected from each other, but connected to her. Is that right?
Yep. Which is exactly what Josh's dream was.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. So, which comes later. I've learned a lot of lessons about the arm of flesh and who to it's not like unrighteous dominion, but it's just not letting people be on those pedestals. It's that second, the greatest commandment is love God
first.
And then the second is love people the second is like unto it. And so I think if it's like unto it, then it's like unto loving God first, which means don't put people on pedestals. Don't put people, love your neighbor as yourself. No pedestals, no pits. We are all we're all in need of the same salvation.
I like that. No pedestals, no pits. That's great.
And so you can, I used to think it was more about how much I loved myself. But it's more about we're on equal standing with God in need of his salvation. And I know love God, love people. And when I'm filled with the love of God, the rest just follows. And that's why the first is such a great commandment, is because the rest just follows when you're filled with his love and grace. So she was on that pedestal. I was giving her that authority in my life. And then there were moments like I think she was 7, my 7-year-old she got pushed from the top of a playground structure. Like she fell 7 feet, I'd say.
Yikes.
And she wasn't seriously injured. I was comforting her. She fell that was scary. And I was so grateful she wasn't hurt. And she was, crying and emotional and like all the things you'd expect. And I was just comforting her. And the friend was she left and she's like, you're going to turn her into a spoiled brat. And that was a God moment where it's like, okay, no more parenting advice from this person. They're not a good person to take advice. They're going through things and they're projecting stuff onto this, and I don't need any of that. It was so troubling, but I was still not aware of, like, there was the dissonance was starting, but there was such a base that had been established that she is good and she never lies, and she points to Christ, and she sees people. That's her gift. And she gives this gift of being seen, and just such this wonderful person. But these are some of the things that started to crack that lens. Mm-hmm. And then when we were doing the sunrise yoga, she brought up that that some of the families were going to expand the school to Snowflake, Arizona. So it was about 3 hours away from where we were, where they just wanted to get it go in together on a huge plot of land and parcel it out and build a community center for the school. And then everyone has their own little homesteads. And so I wanted to be a part of that. I was like, oh, I'm actually in a place we could, like, that sounds great. I want to learn to homestead. I want to be with my friends. I love what the school teaches, because it was like self-directed, purpose-driven education, and or marketed as such. So this is the part where I ended up becoming inner circle with her, and all of the things really started happening because when I actually got it on the payroll at the school. I was the communications director and doing different things. And so I was there before anyone else. On the school property was like on about 1.5 acres, 2 acres. And it was this big house that was transitioned into classrooms, and there was a guest house. That's where my friend lived. And so all she had to do was walk down the sidewalk, and I had a 45-minute drive in with 4 kids, and we'd stay. And so I'd have food packed for the day for them every day, and I'd be there before her. And then I'd be there all day long. Wow. And sometimes we wouldn't get home. We'd get home between 9 and 1 a.m. on a regular, because after school friends would play, and like us moms would be vying for the attention of this person. And so now we're working on the Snowflake project. It's still 2020. There's not actually any school happening. We started school when no one else did. And in the summer preceding that, we had started working on what we called the Snowflake project. And so we had this board and everything. And that's when she reached out to the Choates and invited them down from Utah to come be part of this project we're doing. And so they left everything that they had going up at Monticello, and left everything to come help us build this permaculture, just this huge project that we had going.
Okay, so you were there before the Choates were there then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. And they were there a couple months, and all hell broke loose, quite literally. So some things that happened, you know what? I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. Things that just in my timeline, it happened that April. We had, like I said, we just moved, and we moved 45 minutes away, and I was down this highway, and I was driving my last load home for the move, transferring the last thing over. Wasn't feeling well, and so I started doing like some relaxation techniques. I wasn't really thinking about the fact I was driving. And I just know I was in pain, and I was trying to manage it on this drive. I woke up to trying to, I couldn't move the wheel. It's like I was trying to steer the wheel and I couldn't. And I woke up to the struggle. And if I'd been able to steer the wheel, I would have gone into oncoming traffic. Like, I opened my eyes and I was trying to steer into oncoming traffic at going about 60. And so I react by, I was trying to go this way, and I just reacted to go this way, and the wheel would not budge. It would not budge. And until I fully woke up and came to myself and had all of my faculties, as soon as I had all of that, the wheel released into my control again. And so I had this experience where God saved my life. And less than a month later, I had a heart attack. And I think maybe, I don't know if the chotes were here yet. It was middle of May, but I had a heart attack and I woke up. It's like I woke up to it. And I was, because of all the visualization and all the things I learned to handle things with like the pancreatitis, I learned that when the fear makes pain worse. And so when I have pain, I just have this like, okay, the way to counter fear is with faith. And so I just have this automatic response to pray when I feel pain, so I don't go into the fear. And so I was like, what is happening? I'm praying. I'm like, God, help me understand what is happening and what do I need to do? Because I was like, the pain was so bad. And like, I had all of the like numbness, like practically like useless arm, just all these symptoms. Like, what's happening? Is this scary? And the first thing I hear was, don't Google it. And he was like, you want to not be afraid? Don't Google it. And then I just was shown Google as this like open maw of just demons and awful, like just this. And I was like, oh, okay, deal. I won't Google that. So what's happening? And he was like, you're having a heart attack. Wake up, Mike, and ask for a blessing. I remember not being sure, like, I know this happened in 2020, and I know that my waking up journey happened a little bit later, but I also didn't know where I stood with the authority and with what blessings and with all of that. But I was just like, you know what? I've just been given a direct, like, this is what I do. So I wake him up and I'm like, Mike, I need a blessing. This is happening. So he gets up and like, when he laid his hands on my head, and the minute he invoked the blessing, just like called on God's name, I felt all of it draw up and out of my crown, and just all of it was just gone. And then I was told not to go to the hospital, which I was really grateful for, because showing up at a hospital in May of 2020, I don't know if I'd ever leave it.
Right.
And I mean, I've talked to people about that experience and they've been like, oh, that was probably just an anxiety attack or whatever. But I'm like, I was spoken to by God. The directions I was given to take care of it was the same voice that told me what it was. And so I'm going to trust that, and it's hard because a lot of people don't trust that something happened unless you can get it verified by the medical world. But I just had I experienced 2 miracles in a month, which a year later will have even more just significance to me. But so back to Snowflake and the chotes coming, and that summer, my bullet point for this is witch hunts and demons. So kind of tells you how it goes. So with my heart attack, I feel like I still had like phantom echoes of it that would occur. And so I had, my friend was my friend. I hate using that term. She was not my friend. I was the best friend ever. I was a very good friend. She was not. So the founder of the school, she was someone I had reached out to when it happened, because there weren't many people that I felt could handle me saying I had a heart attack with me having not gone to the hospital. She held that space for whatever reasons that she did. She always held that sort of space. So I went to her, and one of our other friends turned me on to like Cayenne and all these things. So, but now she's involved in the fact that I've had this, I'm having echoes, I'm at the school. She has low-key kidnapped another person's teenager because that child was like having problems at home. And so she just moved in to the guest house at the school. I don't know how I ever thought any of this was okay. Like there was that going on. There was this man who, was married, but he said he was getting a divorce, and that like he had cancer, and his wife said that she'd rather he just die than ever divorce, and so like he had this story, and it was like, well, once this is finalized, I'm probably going to marry the founder. Like, we're going to have this relationship. And so I didn't see how that was like, how everything was presented, how everything was twisted, how everything was like, this is how you interpret this. Like that's something with cult or narcissist or whatever. Like, this is how to interpret the thing. Like, you can't trust your senses, like all these things, but this is how you'll interpret it. And so even though, like, you can clearly see these events, like this 16-year-old, like, why is she living with you when her parents are like, there's just these things, but she started on this thread that the 16-year-old was possessed. And that she was actually targeting me. And every time I had an echo, like she's like, oh, see, she's right there. We have to protect you from this teenager, essentially. And like, all of the adults were convinced that this girl needed our help. And there was just like an intervention, and I don't even know how to frame what happened, but I just feel so awful for this, what this girl had to go through in this interrogation that this person put her through, with all these trusted adults backing her up. And then with Josh having his dream, suddenly he's the Antichrist. Suddenly, he's actually a polygamist. Both him and his wife have propositioned the founder to have her be.
So these were the lies that the leader was spreading about the Choates. Did you believe these lies at the time? Yes. It's okay. We're all about confessing and repenting here.
Yes, I trusted her.
The brainwashing, right?
Yeah, it's the brainwashing. It's also, it didn't help that I was part of an organization that was a perfect breeding ground to make me super pliable to another, right. like just authority figure of their trust them. Don't trust your own senses. I can't hear my own intuition, right, because they distort everything so much. Mm-hmm. So they get targeted, they get attacked, they pretty much get run out of town on a rail. What is that? Like, on a rail? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then there were our friends who believed them, who went and talked to them and got the story from them, because the founders like, you can get their side of the story. Like, go talk to them. That's fine. And when I heard that, it was so funny, because there was a conflict of like, well, you knew she didn't mean that, right? Like, you guys went and did it, but now she's mad at you because you actually did it, and you were supposed to know not to do that. I knew not to do that. Now you guys are just drinking the Kool-Aid, and sounding exactly like them, and I'm not interested. I'm not interested in partaking of your knowledge, like. Oh, it was so bad. You're
brainwashed when you start to shut down.
I started recording
evidence.
Oh yeah, right.
Right.
I started recording our conversations and supplying them to the founder, and wow. It was bad. And so then she ended up kicking out all of those people, and this was the end of 2020. And there was a class, like it was December 15th, and she was everything was falling apart. Everything was tense, but they were still at the school, but I knew they were on their way out. I think they knew it was coming. And, there were 3 of us that were like team founder. There was the narcissist and her 2 flying monkeys. We'll just say that. And then there was everyone else. And my daughters were in a class with like of the 3 of us, one of them was a teacher, and then on the Choate side was another teacher in my class. And I remember telling this friend that was a teacher to let me know if anything weird happened in class, like that my kids were okay, that like there was just so much tension. There were so many witch hunts. There were so many things. There were just so many And yeah, I'm trying to piece it all together. But like I said earlier, with all the trauma, I've got like the Swiss cheese memory. But
Right.
but my daughter it was her birthday, and she was in class, and she was hiding under a blanket because it's not a traditional school. You could sit on the ground and bring comfortable things and learn in comfortable ways. But she was hiding, and so my friend ended up checking on her, like, "You okay?" And she kept on being like, "I'm fine, just don't feel well." But what she said happened is that, like, she eventually came up, and I'm like, "What happened?" Because she did not look well. And she's like, "Well, I was in class and I felt something bad come in, and I turned, and it was one of the people that were siding with the chote had just walked in, but something else had come in with like ill intent towards her. And she just started feeling really bad from that point." Mm-hmm. And she thought it was attributed with our other friends at the time. We all believed that. But I sent her to the guest house to like lay on the couch, and I came and checked on her, and she had this emaciated, hollow, sallow look to her. Like she was gray, and her eyes were like she looked like she was dying before my eyes. And I'm like, I don't know what is happening, but I immediately like called on the power of God to like cast out. I was like, I'll cast out, And when I called on God, he said, rebuke the sender, and ask for retribution against this. And what was really interesting, I've never had those words come to me like that, but within minutes of rebuking and just using the words that were given, and I don't have them now, but using the words I was given, she like plumped up again and like pinked up, and like within minutes, like life flowed right back into my daughter.
Wow.
And in the hindsight of like looking back, everything started falling apart in the narcissist's life right at this point that I was told to rebuke and like ask for retribution to the sender, like the cause, the source of like where did this come from? And I'd just been following the spirit in asking for things, and I didn't piece that together at the time, because we thought that it was like these two different sides, that this side was the Antichrist, this side was the polygamists. These people were not listening to God, and they had to go. And then it was just me and a teacher, and then the narcissist staying, and then we're like holding everything together at the school, right? And things happened. There were other things like just the campaign smears. Watch out for that. Like always go and get the other person's side of the story. If you want to look out for a narcissist or a cult, they don't let you find out from the original source to verify anything, red flag. But
that sounds similar to things that happen in LDS wards.
Yeah. And so like at the time, like in this experience, in this little pocket of time, like Josh had done some foot zoning for us. Mm-hmm. And once they were gone and all the stories were being told afterwards to just cement that this was like the right thing, like stories that come out of the woodwork, she used the thing that happened to my daughter, saying that it happened to her son, and that it was from like Josh foot zoning her son, and that he was like dying before her eyes. And like it was exactly my story with my daughter. And it wasn't and this wasn't the only time that she ended up using like my traumas as her stories to garner sympathy from me. So those are just some things that came where it's like he tried to harm my son, but in hindsight that didn't happen. No one else saw that happen. Like no one else experienced it, and no one asked the son what his experience was.
Of course not. Then the truth would come out.
Like I don't even know if he knew that story was being told about him.
Right.
So everyone's leaving. The school's falling apart.
So what did you do eventually to get out? Like, what was like that moment where you're like, okay, we're done. Let's get out of here.
Well, at the time I was on the right side. Mm-hmm. We had a just cause. And this was when I'm like, okay, our whole snowflake thing, like we put all this money into this land. We had 100 acres.
Wow.
And all this planning, and now it's going to be sold, and all these dashed dreams. And it was like, darn those polygamists.
Darn those polygamists.
And so I'm like,
they're not even polygamists.
Yeah. But thank goodness they were, because I was like, okay, God, every time polygamy has ever like reared its ugly head in any aspect that I've seen it at work in my life, something bad happens. And right now it's really affecting my life. Help me understand how this is your your higher law.
Interesting.
And I was led to, and I was really good Mormon. Don't go to outside sources, don't, and so I was led to the Joseph Smith papers and the official declaration on marriage. Or I don't know if that's not exactly its title, but DNC 101, the original, right? Mm-hmm. The Hemlock Knots timeline on polygamy. Mm-hmm. Actually, that was after, like, my first foray into not church approved was the LDS Freedom Forum, where some of these ideas that 132 wasn't from Joseph, and that like, oh yeah, I just happened to like find it in my pocket because I saved it from the fire, and then it just like 7 years later, his death, ta-da! This validates what we've been doing in secret all this time anyway. And so that just kind of expanded, and I found it was just like, well, everything I thought I knew was wrong. Polygamy is not of God. And God brought me to the evidence that Joseph Smith didn't practice it. And he brought me further to the point where it stopped mattering if at some point, like it stopped mattering if I'm right or wrong about that, because my salvation doesn't come from Joseph Smith. But the fruit of the Book of Mormon is what brought me to Christ. And so I do not believe, like, there was just this piece of like, the man that translated that and brought this to my life wasn't a prophet who also was a predator. And you never framed it as a predator with it, like polygamy wasn't predatory, right. Mm-hmm. But it is.
It is. Mm-hmm.
It is. It absolutely is. And writing it off or establishing it anything else, it's abusive to have anyone believe that it's not, like the abomination that Jacob too says it is. And like, it's just throughout the scriptures, it's an abomination. And so,
right. And when you understand the culture of polygamy, you understand how much of an abomination it is, because how much it hurts people.
Yeah.
How it's hurting people to this day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I just was like, okay, everything, like we're shifting all the sand, all this sand shifting. All I know is, polygamy is not of God. The Book of Mormon is true. Joseph Smith translated it. That's all I know. And I was just at this place, and then I shared it with my two friends. And, I also, because of secret combinations in the Book of Mormon, because I'm like, what the thing that the Book of Mormon testifies more, it's like it testifies of Christ and it testifies of secret combinations, And so if Brigham Young had a secret society, then every successor of Brigham Young is part of that secret society. But I was done. I was pretty done with the church, except for the church wasn't done with my narc friend. Okay,
so this was all happening while you were still friends with the narcissist.
Mm-hmm. On Team Narcissist.
It's kind of amazing how God is working in you, though. Like, you're on Team Narcissist, but then you're waking up to all this truth.
And I shared it with them, and they were waking up to all this truth. And they were, like, I don't know. There's just so many things, because then there was so I know I alluded to, like, no one had died yet. The narcissist was having an affair. with the man who said he was getting a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
This man who was facing cancer, like caught up in her web, and she was having an affair with. She ended up he's dying. He showed up to one of the meetings and said, "I was just given days to live." Like the treatment, he'd been encouraged off of the treatments by her to like go like natural healing, which is a dynamic in how everything played out, because they ultimately pegged that on the Choates for the natural healing. And when he ultimately passed away, that was put on them. That happened several months later.
Mm-hmm.
After I'd woken up to things, but not woken up all the way. Okay. So I've woken up to the church. I'm not awake yet to my narcissist friend, and she gets a church membership council. Her membership's on the chopping block because he's trying to, the man she had an affair with is trying to right his life before he dies. He's trying to make things right with his family. And so her shenanigans are coming to light. And even though like this polygamy thing has come to light and she's like, oh yeah, like she's on board with all that, she was fighting to keep her membership because of the temple, the eternal family aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And even though she was like in the middle of her own divorce proceedings, or was divorced by this time, I don't know. Just there was so much. It was such a mess. With the church council, she's like, I never had an affair with him. Like she's getting me and my friend on her side. Like that didn't happen. And then she used, there was one person in the entire world that I told anything about thing to. And it was her.
Oh no.
And she used that and my trauma and said that's what happened to her. And that there was nothing consensual with this man, and use all of my trauma to get, just the like, well, I'll be the person that believes you. I'll be that person and I'll fight for you. So I wrote so many letters to stake presidents and the first presidency, and just like declaring her innocence, and fought for her. I did learn firsthand that process, I don't care that she's like this sniveling little weasel that like was lying. That process is unfair in the excommunication. There is nothing just or loving or right about it. And I got to see that firsthand because I was at a lot of meetings. There was a lot of meetings to like support her. So I feel bad for the people who definitely don't deserve it. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption. She wasn't choosing that or in a space to qualify. And I hate saying things like that, but like it was just for her to receive a consequence, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, and at any time she can repent. She can turn to Jesus too. We all have an equal opportunity to repent. So
it's true. She gets excommunicated. That was like March or April of 2021. And I'm still there trying to hold the school together with my friend I wasn't doing, like my friend was doing everything to hold the school together for this person. 2021 was a lot of feasting on the word. So the Choates are gone, all the school's gone, we're doing all the thing. But while I am also unlearning all of the incorrect traditions and relearning from God, what is his, what is truth? What is his word? What do the scriptures say? And learning so much. There was so much in Isaiah. Isaiah is so much easier to understand when you believe the church is apostate.
Right.
Like when the church is not apostate, like Isaiah does not make sense. The amnesty the church has granted itself from actual prophetic warnings no longer applies. And you can understand Isaiah when the church isn't true. I listened to the Book of Mormon I got through it. Like I just always had it on, just hours and hours of listening. I think I listened to the incompletion every week and just would turn it back on and just restart and was getting through it all the way through on a weekly basis. I learned how the Spirit speaks to me. I learned about like that the emotional, like the Spirit's not an emotion. Like these emotional responses were getting manipulated to say, do you feel that? Do you feel that? And it's like, if I hear God, if I sense God, I will have an emotional reaction to that. It is an emotional thing, but the emotion is not the experience. It is a knowing, an enlightenment, a question, not just these warm fuzzies. I'd be given questions. Like it's kind of like the, can I leave the church? Yes. Do you want to? No. Like I get these questions and then I'd study them and report back. And then, so I was just so deep in the scriptures and studying and learning these things a week preceding a year from my heart attack. So within a week of that anniversary mark, I woke up one morning to, just this, like, the Spirit speaking to me, offer up thy sacraments. And I was like, offer up my sacraments? Like offer up, hang on, what am I hearing? Offer up my sacraments. And I was kind of drowsing in and out of sleep. Like, what does that mean? Like my body, my blood, like the sacraments, body, like my body, my blood, what is happening? And I'm just in this drifting in and out state. And when I wake up, I'm like, I'm going to look up those words, and they're in Isaiah. And I was fascinated by it. And I spent like 3 hours just in the scriptures, just feasting. And I'm just like, what does this mean? And just feeling so good. And then it was like 10 a.m. I have not gone out and mommed yet that day, and I've got 4 kids. And so I opened my bedroom door and it looked like it was 10 a.m. and I had not mommed yet that day. And it was just this instant, like, roar, just this ugliness just coming out of me at my children. And I was like, whoa. And I just closed the door. Like, and I'm like, what was that? Like how can I spend like 3 hours in the Word and and I'm praying like, God, what do I do? Like I'm here, I'm feasting, and then I'm like trying to live real life, and I'm like this, I'm just this weakness, and I'm so easily beset by these things, and like, what more can I do? What more can I do? What do you want from me? And in the what more can I do, it was like you aren't supposed to do it. I'm like you're trying to do it. Surrender this. I will do it. And but it kind of came to me like the example of Alma the Younger. If he could be in this state of anguish because, he's going about destroying the church. I just kind of yelled at my kids one morning. Like I just grumped at my children, if you can save him from doing that, can you save me? Can you save me? Will you save me? And I was just pouring my heart out. Like, help me. It's all on you. I can't do anything. I'm like, what more can I do? And you're saying do less. So it's you. Will you save me? And I felt just like I was on fire. And I could feel I just felt almost like an awareness to the cellular level. Like I was aware of my hair, like my toenails, like every particle of me was just just electrified. I don't even know how to explain it, but it was just alive and just this cleansing, purifying power moving through me. It was just feeling purified. There was light. I felt this lightness, and I was just released from those sorrows that had racked my soul. And then I went and shared my experience with my children. One of them told me that she's like, God was telling me that this was important and I needed to listen and believe you. And then she started singing songs of redeeming love. Like, I don't even know how else to frame it. Like, she had music and words that were like, hallelujah to the Lord Most High. My son also was writing words that were like, there was just this outpouring of the Spirit in our home and in our family. And I just came to know what it means to sing songs of redeeming love, to know what it feels like to be filled with charity. I got to experience that no longer having any disposition to do evil. I wish it lasted longer, but I spent 10 days like unbothered by it. Like I didn't have any response but love for anything. Like, there was nothing that annoyed me. There was nothing that inconvenienced me. It was just all just God in me was the most amazing experience and way to interact in this world. I wish we could all have that just all the time, right? I believe it was a baptism of fire. It was a born again. It was a born again experience. And that's when it also sunk in, now that I knew I was saved, and I knew that believing that you're saved without knowing it is a very precarious state. And it was very humbling to put into perspective the year prior when God had saved my life twice. Mm. And, yeah, that really put things into perspective, because, if you're a member of the church, you're saved. If you're baptized into the true church, you're saved. It has nothing to do with your relationship with Christ, and that is robbing people. It is robbing people of their salvation.
Yeah. It's robbing people of their relationship with Jesus, which is the greatest relationship that we can have in this life. So let's transition to getting away from the narcissist. You've had this transformation, this baptism by fire. Now what?
So we were all, I thought, on the same page. We were with her excommunication, where I was kind of out when the polygamy thing came to light for me. That's all I needed to know. Mm-hmm. But the learning process and trying to fight for her thing kind of kept me in. So she's out, so we can now be out officially. And we ended up going on a road trip from Arizona up to Boise for a restoration conference, like a Joseph Smith conference. Mm-hmm. And we didn't know what we were really getting into. It was for what it's worth, we found out it was a Denver Snuffer event, or at least hosted. There were a lot of different people and belief systems represented in it or whatever, but it's not what we thought we were headed to. But what it was 3 days of a lot of driving and a lot of mask slipping. And I started to see that my friend wasn't how she'd always portrayed herself. Like all these, I'd never, even with all the things going on with the implosion at the school, I don't think I'd ever seen her angry. It was an awful road trip, except for I met a lot of people out here on the way home. They kind of got to see me in the middle of just a huge mess of her just coming at me on this drive. Like, I'm driving and she's just like coming at me with like demon possession and everything that's wrong with me, and how I had just misbehaved at one of our, like, we just met Mark Curtis, and she's like, I was like trying to do my thing that I do. And like, I have this way with people, and like what she was saying sounded like she was trying to cast a spell, and I'd interrupted it and frustrated her plans. And so I'm like, you're welcome, Mark. Like, I may have saved you. I don't know.
Oh my goodness.
But she was attacking me and telling me how badly I'd misbehaved and how embarrassing I am. And then then we show up to the Griffins and meet them for the first time and have like a Bible study with them. And I'm just like, I can't stop talking. I mean, I just had a baptism of fire like 6 weeks previous to this. And so I was on fire for Christ, and I just wanted to pour all of that out. And I didn't understand what was happening with my friend coming at me. And
so she's over here putting you down because you're speaking about these things and not letting her have the spotlight. Is that kind of what it is?
I'm not exactly sure. I think she did just kick out all the rest of the people that she'd been targeting. So I guess maybe she just needed new fodder. I don't know. I was what was left. Like, she said things after the road trip of how I'd behaved at the Griffins. And I remember reaching out to Rebecca, like, it's okay. You can tell me like straight up if I'm this horrible person. I just need to like confirm it or don't confirm. Like, I just need another person to sound off on this, because I feel like I'd have to have like been hit in the head and passed out and been like on puppet strings to have had what her version have happened. And I actually said that to the founder of the school, and she's like, yeah, pretty much. You were just possessed. And it was awful. So we ended, like, I'll spare you all the drama, but we eventually got on our way home. The last road trip I'd been with her, she was falling asleep at the wheel and she wouldn't let me drive. And she was pushing this visit into recreating that. And we had just I just gotten a new van and we were using my vehicle. And then she was pushing us into this scenario of we were going to recreate the not getting enough sleep and driving home. There was some drama over that and trying to resolve how we were going to go forward. I was like, if you leave right now and you promise that we'll pull over if anyone's drowsy, we can go home right now. And so it was like 1 a.m. and we headed home. And bless the Griffins for being so hospitable to us, like, to just, sure, do all of this in our space. This is great. So I let her drive first, and we had set up my van to like have a place for people to sleep when we weren't driving. And so I was in the back, and she was just driving crazy. And I'm like, just praying. I prayed nonstop. I didn't sleep. I prayed nonstop for 6 hours. And I was getting download after download after download after download of just my lens shattering, and look at this and look at this and let me teach you that. It had proceeded with one question was like I had released I'd been in this process of like letting go of all my idols. And God's like, well, what about her? Are you willing to give her up for me? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, yes, like what, wait, why, And so this question had been going on in it's like, how is she an idol? Like, and so anyway, there's just this dynamic that God was showing me. I'd made her north, and he was reclaiming me. He was realigning me. He was helping me see that it wasn't, if you're oriented to someone as your north, that shouldn't be, you might think that you have good boundaries because you can't actually see that them being north is the boundary crossing. And so, and thus it is with like cults and just the narcissistic dynamics. So I'm learning all of this, and we stop at a gas station, and I'm trying to tell my other friend who's on this road trip, like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm learning. And we're like, you saw, and she couldn't see it. She couldn't see it at the time. And I don't blame her. Like, I couldn't see it when my friends were trying to tell me when they left, or when the chotes were trying to tell me. By the end of the trip, we got home, and I was like, I've been praying. God told me I need to distance myself. We're going we're not going to be back I'm not bringing my children back for the next semester in August. I'm just going to take a break. Just need some space. I spent like 2 days writing something to send her, and God was helping me refine it and refine it and refine it. And when it got to a point where it's like, okay, send it, you'll find out who she is. Like those were the words, send it, you'll find out who she is. When I'm pouring out I'm telling her about like, oh, I was having bad boundaries and I'm going to correct that. Like I sent that with like oh, she'll be so proud of me. Like I still did not know the monster that I was like admiring and supporting but I was like, God woke me up. God saved, like God is making me aware of this. God is showing me that you've been north and he needs to be north. I really just thought it was a boundary issue. I thought that she was going through hard things and I just had inappropriate boundaries. And I was so hurt. And I remember I had the most amazing experience with forgiveness where God just took it from me. I was just praying to forgive her and not hold on to it, not have it like eat away at me, to help me to experience if there's I know that there's a miracle in his forgiving me, but if, are there miracles in our ability to forgive others? Like if I would need a miracle to forgive her, essentially. So I've had this experience forgiving her. God gave me this experience where I've forgiven a lot over my life. I have forgiven so much over the course of my life. I have an enormous propensity for forgiveness that I think is a gift from God in and of itself, just in everything that I've been able to forgive and move through and
you've been
heal
through
from.
So much at the hands of other people. So much.
And I don't really harbor any ill will. And people have told me like, well, you're like, that's like codependency, or they'll assign some mental illness to it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm good with just God has gifted me with forgiveness, the ability to, because the forgiveness is for me. It's for me. And I needed that amazing, enormous propensity for forgiveness. And he gave me that. Like, I'm just going to be grateful for the gift. Mm-hmm. So, but I needed more to forgive this person. And it was amazing. Just this prayer to it was just, everything was just lifted. He's like, as long as you don't want to hold it, I'll hold it for you. And there were moments where I'd kind of there was a little bit of a tug of war where he showed me he'd give it back if I insisted on wanting to dwell or whatever, ruminate. And I was like, oh yeah, no, never mind. You might as well hold that, I don't want, undo button. Yeah. So, and so this happened a couple months. It was in the August timeframe. The road trip was the end of June. So it's probably 2 months since I just thought that I had boundary issues, and then God helped me forgive her. And so I re-entered her life. Carefully, but not carefully enough. But this was the fulfillment of you'll find out who she is. Because without this, I really wouldn't have known. Just from, if I just left the school and left it at that with the road trip, I wouldn't have known. But the thing with narcissists is they can't be in competition with anyone for the power over you. You are their supply, and you are to revolve around them. So when I sent her a letter expounding on everything God did to wake me up to it, God became public enemy number one. And so then the preceding I still I don't know that I've fully recovered. I'm so sorry. There came a man among the people of Nephi whose name was Sherem, and he began to preach among the people and to declare unto them there should be no Christ. And he preached many things which were flattering unto the people, that he might overthrow the doctrine of Christ. He labored diligently that he might lead away the hearts of the people. And he did lead away many hearts. And he knowing that, she knowing that I had faith in Christ, she sought much opportunity that she might come unto me. And she was learned and could use much flattery and much power of speech according to the power of the devil, and had hoped to shake me from my faith. Which is why I also refer to her as Sharam. Because these are, you ask people their hardships after they leave the church, and I've had some. There's fallout with family and friends and just leaving this hive mind. Of course, there's that fallout. But it's the space of finding out, like, well, what's next? And I had enough experiences not to... There were a few charlatans that like rear their heads and want like follow me and my things over. I don't know, just the breakaways and the priestcrafts. But I was just trying to, anyway, it's just the navigating the what comes after and what are my beliefs and sorting through everything and trying to come to truth. And in that precarious state, she comes in back into my life and she's just deconstructing, but she's deconstructing too. Like she's given up the Book of Mormon just in those couple months that I wasn't there. Took something else as her Bible, like the Ringing Cedars. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's don't read it.
Okay,
but
no,
it was her answer to me of like, where's my power as a woman, and
her answer wasn't that her power is in God.
No, because Jesus is just a construct of that religions use to create fear that we're not saved, or that we need saving. We need saving, so they need a construct to save us, and it's just a fear tactic, and there is no Christ.
Whoa, so she really was a Sharam then. Big time.
Yeah. You can't simmer in a soup without starting to taste like it, and I stayed around her way too long, but her intent was to take my belief of God from me, because he was what was in competition with her having full control over me. That as long as I believed in God, she couldn't have full sway. I haven't really recovered from it. And I think mostly it's the shame which is it's just, yeah.
There's something I like to say on this podcast a lot, and it's that your story is not over yet. There's more healing to be done. Yeah. There's more forgiveness, more redemption, more saving that Jesus can do for us. And so here you are now in your story, sharing your story, which is beautiful, by the way. And you're going to help so many people, because this woman is not the only person out there that is like this, and we need to be able to see the signs. How do you navigate trusting again? We trust God, number one, but it's really hard when we're trying to navigate relationships after we wake up to all these things, because who do you trust? How do you navigate that in your life now?
Well, I mean, my go-to is CC from man whose breath is in his nostrils, for wherein is he to be accounted of. That's my favorite. I was like, see, God said, don't trust people. They're every breath is like he gives it, like, mm-hmm. I don't know that I have trust issues.
I think we all have trust issues after coming out of the church. And you like came out of like a lot more than just a church.
I tend to see people through my own, like, I just like, who am I? And I see me on, like, I'm still just as naive and gullible and trusting in people, but I put it through the filter of God, because
Yes.
I know I can trust God.
Mm-hmm.
And so the practice is to not be closed off to people or assuming of people, or like it's to just allow God to, I think I put it best the first way, is just through the filter of God and trusting the Spirit and allowing him to warn me to remember to go to him, remembering to go to him. And I trust that.
Absolutely. I love that answer. Put it through the filter of God, because he will tell us. And actually, one thing I do is I pray that God will show me, because sometimes I miss the telling. I'm like, miss that one. But if he shows me, that's the evidence of what he's trying to tell me. And so he always does. He protects us when we follow him. I love that. So where are you at now?
Sorry, one more hardship, if that's okay, because
Absolutely.
is I almost like a survival guilt of like, you woke me up out of everyone, like, why me? Like, there's all these people I love that I want to have wake up, why me? And I don't know that I'd label it fully survival guilt, because I know that is a very real, like, deep trauma, and it's just the best way to encapsulate it. But the truths I stand on are that Jesus is my Lord and Savior, that the teachings in the Book of Mormon are what brought me to know him, that were brought me to see the pattern, to cry out to him. Very instrumental in waking me up, very instrumental to seeing that the LDS doctrine is incorrect. Learning a new way of praising. There's something to when you have felt to sing redeeming love. Alma 5, can you do so now? No, honestly, not right now. In my journey, I'm still, it's just this continual seeking to, and repenting and returning and reestablishing and just that depths of humility to, how does Nephi put it, where it is diligently seeking him. I believe that's the enduring to the end, is to never lose that. But praise and worship become so much more natural when you've experienced God and why you would want to praise him. I've had some other really cool experiences since coming out of everything and relearning the broad path versus the he is the way. Everything that I've kind of like, I don't know everything. I know that I had experiences with yoga and astrology and energy work where I don't think I'm supposed to be in that space. And that in learning that, I've been able to relearn with God things that have brought actual healing. And all healing comes from him. And it's not me facilitating anything. It's me asking, I know that I have had an experience asking, like, how, with that, like, why me? Because I have these migraines. I'm incapacitated all the time. I'm like, what good am I as your servant? Like, I live in Timbuktu. I have no community. Like, I have friends online and that's it. Like, what, how do I even, what use am I? Like, really, when on paper, and I don't mean to say this in like a derogatory, self-deprecating way, just like
those are the normal thoughts we have about ourselves.
And I embarked upon an extended fast. Ended up being 28 days, water fasting. And so didn't eat, but I like teas and water and stuff I was on, and it was 28 days. And, in that space, I was shown, I had such a close connection, like such a clear, I'd ask and I would just hear exactly what I needed to do. I'd wake up and be like, who can I bless? And it's like, take dinner to this person. And I'm like, really? Because like, I know that their daughter just had a surgery and, but they're clear across town and like, I imagine that their relief society, like their compassionate service has like taken care of this, but anyway, so it was my husband's friend. And so it was like, hey, will you just reach out and see if like bringing dinner tonight would be great? And, cause I had all my like them really, but I figured it'd be all set up. I wouldn't have thought of them. But then my husband reaches out, and that day was the only day they didn't have things like that were coming to like help out or anything. And I was like, okay. Or it just, every day was just, what can I do? How would you have me, what would you have me do? And I was in the space that I could do it. I think that during my fasting, it's like I had freedom from the migraines for that month. And I was able to see a different side of, just see how God could use me to bless people's lives, and that I am capable. And that capability comes from Him. Like He lifts me, He carried me, He provided the way. Just being able to experience something other than like I'm out here isolated. How can I bless anyone with like, why did you choose me?
God doesn't call the equipped. He equips the called. And that's what He's doing with you. And that's what He's going to continue to do with you as you continue to choose Him, which you've been doing. And I think that's awesome.
Thank you.
How do you find clarity after everything that you've been through, which is so much, and you've borne so much in your life, and you've partnered with Christ to do so? How do you find clarity in your life now?
Turning off the noise. There's a lot of noise in the world. In part, that is another act of God to be able to get away from it. But I just continually seeking the Spirit, asking what I'm ready to know, what He knows I can do. The scripture that comes to mind is, "For my soul delighteth in the scriptures, and my heart pondereth them." My soul delighteth in the things of the Lord, and I ponder continually upon the things that I have seen and heard. I honestly think the telling of the story, the rekindling of how did I even get here? Like, how has God moved in my life? And rejoicing in that, and being able to be in a place of praising Him and trusting only Him is what brings that clarity, because he's right there. He's right there guiding. He's directing my paths when I let Him. And and so if I don't want the brambles and I want the clearer path, that clarity comes in remembering and continuing to seek Him.
I love that. Remembering and continuing to seek Him. Thank you so much, Julie, for sharing your story. Thank you for your courage and being raw and vulnerable with us. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for all of your time and for creating this space for people to tell their stories.
Thanks. If you guys are interested in joining us for an episode of the Clarity Podcast, where you come and share your story of how you have left mainstream religion to follow Jesus Christ, please feel free to reach out to me at clarity.podcast@gmail.com. You can also find me on my website at forgedinhisfire.com, or you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at forgedinhisfire. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Clarity Podcast.